We're going to be working on the Phantom 3 steering box column from 3AZ36. So Phantom 3 used a Marl's brand steering box, which happens to be a very good steering box. I think that it's much better than the earlier Rolls-Royce type. A big improvement. It is composed of tapered roller bearings, which is much better than the sleeve type bearings that was used in the worm and nut type steering box that Rolls-Royce designed and built. Marl's boxes were also used in very late 2025s and M series Derby Bentleys and Wraiths, and then they also carried them over into post-war cars, but they don't really bear much resemblance to what was used with the Phantom 3. So in other words, they did not interchange with any parts, I don't think. There may be a bearing here or there that might have interchanged, but I don't think there was really a whole lot of other pieces and parts. So you're not going to take one out from a Phantom 3 and put it in a post-war car. So anyway, the box and column are bolted together and everything comes apart. So now for some reason the AZ series cars had this knurled nut right below the steering wheel, but they did away with that by the time they got to the AX series cars. So I don't know why they were there and what the purpose was, but maybe we'll figure it out as we're taking them apart. So of course we have to, steering box feels pretty nice, so I'm hoping we don't find any problems with it. And this first part of the video is just going to be basically just taking apart some of the pieces. We're not really going to get too deeply involved with it. So we'll get started here. The first part of it is going to be just basically taking this linkage pieces off, because that's where I like to start. Okay, so the very small one here, this one is ride control. So, and of course that has to be the first one to come off. And I like to take off these in as much of an assembly as possible. Just makes life easier. And then the next one is also 3BA. I believe this one is ignition. So let me just verify that. So I'm moving the ignition lever, and I can see that one moving, so that's the one. So now you can do most of this work while the steering box and column are in the car, but it's really you know, so if you needed to take a steering wheel off while all this is in the car, you can. It is also provided that you have a tall roof and or a sunroof, or it's a convertible, because you can get to a point where you cannot pull the control tubes out. because they'll hit the roof or you'll mar up the headlining. So if you happen to have the interior out, or you have a convertible and you want to take the column out, then again, by all means, just keep in mind that there are only a handful of convertibles made. And if you're one of the lucky few, then great. So then of course they made that one a step up, which I believe is 2BA. Okay, so now that we got those out of the way, then we have this large nut right here, and it has a lock tab washer, so we have to undo that lock tab washer. I'll show that to you. Hopefully you can see it. And I'm going to bend it back. And there's prongs on the bottom and the top, or on both sides I should say. And then we need to get a large wrench onto that. So I don't have that handy, so I'm going to have to take a little break and get that real quick. Okay, so surprisingly this loosened up fairly easily. I know you didn't see me do it on camera and you don't believe me, but it did. So we get that out of the way, and then we find the lock tab washer. So now on either side of this flange we have 2BA nuts. Let me get a proper socket for that. And we take these off. Okay, now this is where you need to be kind of on high alert. So once you break the seal here, you can have some oil coming out, especially if the box is in the car. So you really want to think about having a pan to catch whatever oil may be able to come out. So I'm just going to move some stuff around here. In fact, okay, so I just wanted to point out something that I should have told you in the last frame. So there's a locating lock tab, and you can find it because it's placed in this opening and it locates on the tube, and the idea of it is to help position the tube so you have the RR at the very top. So if you follow along in this flange on this other side, located on the other stud, you'll find it, and I'm going to take it off so I can show it to you. You'll know what it looks like. And there it is. Just like that. So yeah, so there's a hole in this tube, which we're going to get out hopefully here in a little bit. And so it'll go in position like this, and it locates in that tube, and then that tube is attached to the quadrant. And yeah, again, I'll point all that out once we get this out, and then you'll be able to understand that a little bit better of why that is how it is. So yeah, this came from another car, and I just had it here, and I just figured I'd point that out so you had a better understanding of what that is. And the reason why this is so difficult to get off is because it's tapered, and the tube that's inside here is tapered. And Rolls-Royce and their fine tapers are always difficult to separate. Okay, so I got the taper broken free. So my method was to put the nut back on, and then I used an old socket and tapped on the nut, and then that broke the taper free, and now I'm able to get the piece off. And there's a spacer here, and then now that'll enable me to slide out the tube assembly. So I'm going to regroup everything, slide all that out, show you what it's like, and we're going to have all kinds of fun. Okay, so now that we have that bottom part of the fastener undone, we can pull the quadrant and the tube assembly out a bit, which enables us to be able to get to the screws that hold the quadrant in place. And these are 3BA screws that hold that on. So if we take those off, then we can get the quadrant horn button assembly off. Now the horn button itself is held on by these little screws right here. I'll show those to you. There's one right there, one right there, and one right there, and another one down in there. And I don't know if I have a little, I'm working out of my home workshop. I don't know if I have a little screwdriver that I can get down in there. Hopefully I do. But what I'm gonna do is just at least get this assembly off for now, so I can get it on the bench. So here we go. One of the wonderful things about Phantom 3s is how beautifully they steer and handle. And of course, that's when the steering box is in very good shape. And you know, a bad steering box can lead to a bad steering car, so just keep that in mind. So there is a hole in the steering wheel so you can access these, but you need a very, very, very thin nut to be able to get in there. And I'll show that to you. I think in the shop I have one of those. And I'll measure that hole and let you know what the diameter of it is. In case anybody does need to do that. I have done it before in the past, and you also need to get into a very difficult position in order to reach up in there to do it. So now I'm going to send this quadrant out to be refinished, and it's going to a man by the name of Stan Scantlin, and he's in Indiana, and he does a beautiful job of them. And I will show you the results when it comes back, and I will also show you how it all goes back together as well at that point. He also does master switches and faces on other types of switches, and just does an outstanding and beautiful job. And that's the horn wire, so that'll be replaced. And of course that is a 2-conductor wire, because there's 2 options with this horn. It's a loud and soft. Right. So again, I'm not so sure what the purpose of this knurled nut is. Maybe it's for extracting the steering wheel, because they can be kind of difficult to get off, even though you get this nut off because it's on a tapered spline. I don't know if you saw me struggle or not, but all these were like painfully tight. Just use that impact driver and they all just broke loose very nicely. So those screws held on this locking plate that holds on the nut for the steering wheel. So now I want to figure out a way to put a notch or something to be able to align the steering wheel back onto the shaft in the right place. Probably just use a little punch or something. See what I can find. All right, that looks good. And of course that's tighter than a Dickens, and it should be. I forget what size it is. I'm probably gonna have to dig around for a socket. So I'm going to pause the camera. So I'm just doing a quick demonstration on how I feel this knurled collar extracts the steering wheels. Again, I think these are only found on the AZ series Phantom 3s. Maybe there are some other pre-war or maybe even some early post-war cars that have them. I don't know of them. I'll probably end up looking up to see if there are any, but I've never seen them on any other ones. So the first thing I like to do is to put some tape on the knurling in order to protect it, because there's really no other way to grab it but to use something like channel locks. I suppose you could use a cloth or something like that, perhaps. I prefer tape. So I already have the nut that actually holds the steering wheel off, and then now we're going to unwind the collar because it is threaded on. So I broke it loose. So now it's going to come up tight against the wheel. And once it tightens up, then you'll feel it starting to push the wheel up, and it is now. And I don't know if you can see it or not, but it's starting to extract the wheel off. And once it loosens it up some, then you can pop it off. And there you go. And again, I see no other purpose for this collar other than extracting the wheel. So there's no seal under there, there's no oh, and I'll show you. So there's nothing else. And when I go to take the column apart, I will show you what's there, which will probably be a few videos away yet. And again, this is the collar. It's got an internal thread. There does seem to be a little bit of a packing in there. Again, we'll investigate a little further when we get a little further down the pike with working on the steering column and box and all that. So for now, we're going to put this all away. This might be a feature that's on other pre-war models, I don't know. I will work on investigating it. I've never seen it before. Maybe even on some of the early post-war cars. It'd be neat if it is, because it does make life a lot easier. Because boy, that fine taper and spline can really hold on a steering wheel.